Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This video explores the economic and financial implications of divorce in the United States and is intended strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. The information provided does not constitute legal, financial, or tax advice. Divorce laws, asset division, and alimony regulations vary significantly by state and individual circumstance. You should always consult with a qualified attorney or a certified financial planner regarding your specific situation. We encourage all viewers to conduct their own due diligence and thorough research before making any major life or financial decisions. The American male is currently facing a silent trillion-dollar erosion of wealth that almost no one is talking about. While we often focus on the emotional wreckage of a broken marriage, we ignore the cold, hard mathematics of the aftermath. Imagine working for 25 years to build a life, the suburban home, the diversified portfolio, the college funds, only to watch 50% to 70% of your net worth vanish in a span of 18 months. But here is the statistic that should keep you awake tonight. According to longitudinal studies from the U.S. Census Bureau and various academic institutions, men often experience a permanent shift in their lifestyle trajectory post-divorce that is mathematically steeper than almost any market crash in history. We are talking about the divorce tax, a cumulative financial burden that impacts everything from your credit score to your ability to retire before the age of 75. This video is the definitive masterclass on the economic footprint of divorced men in America. We aren't just looking at the legal fees or the immediate split of the bank account. We are diving deep into the secondary and tertiary ripples, the lifestyle maintenance trap, the massive tax implications of filing status changes, and the long-term compounding loss of redirected investment capital. By the time we finish this 10-part deep dive, you will understand the exact economic mechanics of why divorce is the single most expensive event a man can experience, and more importantly, the historical trends and case studies that define how men either recover or spiral into financial irrelevance. Let's look at the immediate impact. When a household splits, the cost of living doesn't just double, it expands exponentially. This is what economists call the loss of economies of scale. In a dual income or even a single income marriage, the cost per person for housing, utilities, and insurance is optimized. The moment that household fractures, the man is often forced to find a second residence that reflects his previous standard of living, while still footing a significant portion of the original mortgage or rent through support payments. This isn't just about paying 2 utility bills. It's about the massive inefficiency of maintaining 2 separate infrastructures for one family's life. Take, for instance, a case study of a mid-career professional in a state like Illinois or New Jersey. Before the divorce, he and his spouse shared a $4,000 monthly mortgage on a single property. Post-divorce, he might be required to pay $2,500 in child support or maintenance, while simultaneously needing to rent a 2-bedroom apartment near his children's school for $2,800 a month to maintain his visitation rights and quality of life. Suddenly, his housing expenditure has jumped from a shared $4,000 to an individual $5,300. When you factor in that he is now likely filing as single or head of household, rather than married filing jointly, his tax bracket shifts, and he has less disposable income to cover that 30% increase in housing costs. The tax trap is perhaps the most overlooked element of the economic footprint. Most men don't realize that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 fundamentally changed the math of divorce. For any divorce finalized after December 31, 2018, alimony payments are no longer tax-deductible for the payer, and they are not considered taxable income for the receiver. This means a man is paying support with after-tax dollars. If he earns $150,000 a year and is ordered to pay $30,000 in annual maintenance, he is taxed as if he still has the full $150,000 in his pocket, even though he only has access to $120,000. This creates a shadow tax that can effectively push a man's real-world tax rate into a territory that makes it nearly impossible to save for his own future. Beyond the monthly cash flow, we have to talk about the liquidation event. In many American divorces, the only way to achieve an equitable distribution of assets is to sell the primary residence. This is often done under duress or within a court-mandated timeline, which rarely aligns with the best market conditions. When you sell a home to settle a divorce, you aren't just losing a roof, you are losing the transaction costs, the 6% agent commissions, the closing costs, and the moving expenses. For a $600,000 home, that is $36,000 in equity vaporized before a single dollar is split. If that home was purchased 10 years ago at a 3% interest rate, The man is now forced into a 7% or 8% mortgage market for his new residence, essentially doubling his interest expense over the next 30 years. We also need to address the opportunity cost of capital. If a 45-year-old man loses $250,000 of his 401k or brokerage account in a qualified domestic relations order (QDRO), he isn't just losing $250,000. He is losing 20 years of compounding interest on that money. At a standard 7% annual return, that $250,000 would have grown to nearly $1 million by the time he reached 65. By removing that capital now, he has effectively deleted $1 million from his retirement reality. This is why we see a historical trend of divorced men working significantly longer than their married counterparts. The economic footprint isn't a one-time crater. It is a permanent redirection of his wealth-building potential. Then there is the psychological productivity tax. Data suggests that men going through high-conflict divorces often see a temporary but sharp decline in their professional performance. The distraction cost of legal meetings, court dates, and the emotional toll leads to missed promotions, lower bonuses, or even job loss. In a competitive U.S. labor market, being off your game for 18 to 24 months can result in a career stagnation that costs hundreds of thousands in lifetime earnings. We see this in corporate America frequently, the high performer who suddenly plateaus because his mental and financial bandwidth is consumed by a legal battle. Finally, we have to look at the insurance and healthcare footprint. In many cases, a man may be required to maintain life insurance policies with his ex-spouse as the beneficiary to secure support payments, adding an extra monthly premium to his budget. If he was previously covered under his spouse's superior corporate health plan, he now has to navigate the costs of individual enrollment or a less subsidized plan through his own employer. These nickel and dime costs, $200 here for life insurance, $400 there for health premiums, accumulate into a massive monthly divorce overhead that most men fail to calculate when they are in the initial stages of a split. As we move through this series, we are going to break down these numbers with surgical precision. We will look at how the silver divorce trend is bankrupting men in their 60s, how child support formulas actually work in different jurisdictions, and why the hidden assets hunt often costs more in forensic accounting fees than it recovers. This is not just a discussion about a legal process. It is a forensic audit of the modern American male's financial life. If you want to understand the true cost of the reset button, you have to look at the data that the lawyers don't show you. This is part 1, and the rabbit hole goes much deeper. Now that we have established the broad landscape of the divorce tax, we must peel back the curtain on the most immediate and visceral economic shock: the destruction of the credit-based lifestyle. In America in 2026, your credit score is your financial heartbeat. It determines your ability to leverage debt, your insurance premiums, and even your eligibility for high-level employment. For a man entering the divorce process, this heartbeat often flatlines. Imagine a character named Michael, a 42-year-old project manager in Charlotte, North Carolina. In early 2026, Michael had a pristine FICO score of 810. He and his spouse shared 3 credit cards, a mortgage, and 2 auto loans. The moment the petition for dissolution is filed, the legal advice usually involves freezing or closing joint accounts to prevent runaway spending by either party. However, this immediate defensive maneuver has a catastrophic secondary effect. By closing long-standing joint accounts, Michael inadvertently slashes his average age of credit and his total available credit limit. His credit utilization ratio, a massive 30% of his FICO score, skyrockets overnight. While Michael is busy navigating temporary support hearings, he might miss a single payment on a joint department store card he forgot existed, or perhaps his spouse stops paying the utility bill still in his name at the marital home. In the automated world of 2026 credit reporting, there is no nuance for heartbreak. A single 30-day delinquency can trigger a drop of 100 points. For Michael, this means when he goes to secure a lease for his new apartment, he is no longer viewed as a Tier 1 borrower. He is forced to put down a triple security deposit, or worse, he is denied entirely, forcing him into a high-interest corporate housing situation that further bleeds his monthly cash flow. This is the first layer of the economic footprint, the loss of the ability to borrow cheaply. Let's expand on this by looking at the historical trends of debt-to-income ratios post-divorce. Traditionally, a stable married household might maintain a debt-to-income ratio of 30%. Post-split, studies show that many men see this ratio balloon to 50 or 60%. This happens because while the income has been halved or redirected toward maintenance, the fixed debt often remains tied to the individual's social security number. If Michael was the primary earner, the bank still views him as 100% responsible for the $500,000 mortgage, regardless of what the family court judge says about who gets to live in the house. If the house sits on the market for 6 months during a high interest rate environment in 2026, Michael is essentially subsidizing a liability he cannot control, while his own personal debt capacity is zeroed out. We must also analyze the step-by-step erosion of the emergency fund. In a masterclass on economic footprints, we have to talk about liquidity. Most financial advisors recommend a 6-month emergency fund. For a household spending $8,000 a month, that is a $48,000 cushion. During a divorce, this cushion is usually the first thing to be liquidated to pay for the initial legal retainers. Retainers for competent matrimonial attorneys in major U.S. metros now often start at $10,000 to $15,000 per side. As the discovery phase begins, where lawyers hunt for every bank statement and tax return from the last 7 years, those retainers vanish in weeks. Michael finds himself in a position where he is paying $400 an hour for an associate attorney to read emails. Step 1 is the liquidation of the savings account. Step 2 is the tapping of the home equity line of credit. Step 3, and this is where the long-term footprint becomes a permanent scar, is the 401k loan or the early withdrawal. Historical data suggests that men are significantly more likely than women to take early withdrawals from retirement accounts to cover legal fees or temporary support gaps. In 2026, taking a $50,000 distribution not only incurs a 10% federal penalty if you are under age 59 and a half, but it also adds $50,000 to your taxable income for the year. Michael, who is already struggling with the new single filing status, suddenly finds himself pushed into a 32% tax bracket because of the very money he withdrew to survive. He is essentially paying 42 cents on the dollar to the government just for the privilege of accessing his own savings to pay a lawyer. The footprint expands further when we look at the case study of professional stagnation. Let's consider the impact on Michael's career trajectory. In the U.S. corporate world of 2026, performance is tracked through granular metrics and constant availability. Divorce litigation is a part-time job that pays negative wages. Michael spends 3 hours every Tuesday on the phone with his legal team. He spends his evenings scanning documents instead of upskilling for his next certification. Historical trends indicate that divorced men often miss out on the critical acceleration phase of their careers, usually between ages 35 and 50, where earnings typically peak. If Michael misses a promotion that would have come with a $20,000 raise, the economic footprint of that loss is not just $20,000. It is $20,000 every year for the next 25 years of his working life, compounded by the loss of the associated 401k matching and Social Security contribution increases. We are looking at a multi-million-dollar career opportunity cost that is almost never calculated in a settlement agreement. This is why we see a persistent wealth gap between men who stay married and men who divorce, even when their initial earning power was identical. Furthermore, we must examine the hidden cost of the social capital collapse. In the United States, professional networking often happens in social circles that are shared by couples. When a divorce occurs, there is a documented siloing effect. Michael may lose access to certain social clubs, neighborhood associations, or even professional referrals that were tied to his married identity. If 20% of Michael's new business leads came from his spouse's professional network or shared social engagements, those leads evaporate. The cost of replacing that network through formal marketing or cold networking is both high and time-consuming. We also have to discuss the step-by-step reality of child support math in a 2026 economy. Many states use an income shares model. If Michael earns $120,000 and his spouse earns $60,000, the court calculates what a $180,000 household would spend on a child, and then assigns Michael 2/3 of that responsibility. However, these models often fail to account for the skyrocketing costs of specialized extracurriculars, non-covered medical expenses, and the inflation of expectation in American suburbs. Michael might find that his base child support is manageable, but the add-ons for club sports, braces, and summer camps, which are often split pro rata, leave him with less than 40% of his take-home pay for his own needs. As Michael navigates this, he realizes he is living in a functional poverty trap. To the outside world, his $120,000 salary looks successful. But after the 32% effective tax rate, the 25% support obligation, the legal fees, and the cost of maintaining a second home for the children's visitation, Michael is living on the equivalent of a minimum wage worker's disposable income. This leads to a total cessation of his personal investment strategy. He stops contributing to his brokerage account. He stops buying index funds. He stops looking for investment real estate. The economic footprint of a divorced man is the story of a person who was once a producer of capital becoming a mere distributor of it. He becomes a pass-through entity for his own paycheck, moving money from his employer to his ex-spouse, his landlord, and the government, with nothing sticking to his own balance sheet. But there is a specific, even more dangerous financial trap that occurs exactly 12 to 18 months after the final decree is signed. It is a phenomenon known as the rebound liability, and it involves a desperate attempt to reclaim a lost sense of status through high-interest consumer spending. This is where many men, finally free of the legal battle, make the one mistake that ensures they will never retire. In the next part, we are going to look at the psychological drivers of this spending, the trap of the lifestyle bridge loan, and why the second year after a divorce is actually more financially dangerous than the first. You might think the settlement was the end of the bleeding, but for many, it is just the beginning of a much deeper fiscal infection. The rebound liability is a fiscal phenomenon that hits most men at the 18-month mark. By this point, the court dates have faded into a dull memory, the legal fees are largely settled, and the emotional fog is beginning to lift. This is precisely when the financial infection moves from the acute phase to the chronic phase. For many men in America in 2026, the silence of a new, smaller apartment is deafening, and the psychological urge to fill that void with material proof of recovery is overwhelming. This is where we see a massive spike in consumer debt that has nothing to do with the ex-spouse and everything to do with a desperate attempt to reestablish a sense of masculinity and success. Imagine a man named David, a mid-level executive in Houston. He spent 2025 fighting a grueling legal battle that cost him 40% of his liquid assets. By mid-2026, David feels he has survived the worst of it. To reward himself for getting through the fire, and to prove to his peer group that he is still a player in the game, David decides he needs a new vehicle. He isn't looking at a sensible used sedan. He is looking at a high-performance truck or a luxury SUV that signals strength and capability. Because his credit score was dinged during the divorce process, perhaps due to a few missed payments on a joint retail card, he is offered a subprime interest rate of 12%. David justifies the $1,200 monthly payment because he no longer has to consult a spouse on major purchases. What David fails to realize is that he is entering the lifestyle bridge trap. This occurs when a man tries to maintain his pre-divorce lifestyle on a post-divorce budget. Historical trends show that men in this phase often rely on credit cards to bridge the gap between their reduced take-home pay and their fixed costs. David's apartment costs $2,500, his car is $1,200, his child support is $2,000, and his food and utilities are another $1,000. On a $100,000 salary, David's net take-home in 2026 is roughly $6,200 a month after taxes and insurance. He is left with $500 for everything else: clothes, dates, repairs, and emergencies. One unexpected car repair or a medical copay, and David has to reach for the plastic. Within 12 months, he has accumulated $20,000 in high-interest revolving debt. This is the rebound liability in action. It is a secondary economic footprint that is often more damaging than the divorce settlement itself because it carries a 24% interest rate. Let us look at the step-by-step math of the compounded interest catastrophe. If David had taken that $1,200 a month and funneled it into a low-cost index fund, historical market performance suggests he could have rebuilt his lost retirement cushion within a decade. Instead, by locking himself into a depreciating asset with high carrying costs, he has effectively postponed his retirement by another 5 to 7 years. In the 2026 economy, where the cost of services and insurance is rising at a rate that outpaces mid-level wage growth, David is running a race with a parachute deployed behind him. He is experiencing what economists call status-driven wealth erosion. There is also the case study of the bachelor tax in everyday consumption. When David was married, grocery shopping was a bulk activity. A gallon of milk, a large bag of rice, and family-sized protein packs were the norm. As a single man, David finds that his per-unit cost of survival has increased by 40%. He shops at high-end convenience grocers because he lacks the time or the domestic infrastructure to meal prep. He spends $25 on a single Uber Eats delivery because cooking for one feels like a chore. Over the course of a year, this singleness premium drains an additional $6,000 to $8,000 from his balance sheet. This is money that never makes it into his brokerage account. It is a silent leak in the hull of his financial ship. We must also analyze the economic footprint of the dating market in 2026. For a divorced man in his 40s, the cost of re-entering the dating scene is a significant line item that no one budgets for. Imagine David going on 2 dates a week. Between the apps, the dinners, the drinks, and the transportation, he is looking at a minimum of $150 to $200 per week. That is $800 a month. In David's current budget, that is his entire discretionary surplus and then some. This creates a cycle where the search for a new partner, often driven by a desire to return to a dual-income household, actually prevents the man from ever achieving the financial stability required to be an attractive partner in the first place. It is a feedback loop of fiscal instability. Step by step, we see the erosion of what we call the legacy fund. In many American families, the father's role is historically associated with the accumulation of intergenerational wealth, saving for grandchildren's college, or leaving an inheritance. Post-divorce, this goal is usually the first to be abandoned. The economic footprint here is not just felt by the man, but by his descendants. By 2026, the cost of higher education is so high that without a dedicated 529 plan, David's children will likely have to take on significant student debt. Because David's surplus is being eaten by his rebound liability and his increased cost of living, he stops contributing to those education funds. The result is a downward shift in the economic mobility of his entire family tree. Another critical point is the professional opportunity cost of geographic restriction. Many divorce decrees include a radius clause, which prevents a parent from moving more than 50 or 100 miles away from the other parent without court permission. Imagine if David receives a job offer in a different state that pays 30% more and has a lower cost of living. In his married life, the family would move. In his divorced life, David is tethered to a specific zip code to maintain his visitation schedule. He is forced to turn down the promotion. This geographic tax keeps him stuck in a high-tax, high-cost environment where his earnings have hit a ceiling, while his expenses continue to rise with inflation. Historical trends show that this lack of mobility is a primary reason why divorced men often lag behind their married or never married peers in lifetime earnings. They cannot chase the market. They are captive employees. This captivity is a form of economic leverage that employers often subconsciously exploit, knowing that David is less likely to quit or relocate because of his domestic legal constraints. He becomes a lower risk, lower reward asset for the corporation, and his salary increases reflect that reality. Furthermore, we must address the cost of the social support replacement. When a household fractures, the invisible labor of the spouse managing schedules, handling household maintenance, and social coordination must be outsourced. David now has to pay a lawn service, a cleaning service, and perhaps a laundry service to reclaim the time he needs to work his high-pressure job. These costs, while appearing small individually, represent a massive shift in his personal P&L statement. He is paying for services that were previously internalized within the marriage. As we look deeper into this, we realize that the economic footprint of a divorced man is defined by a transition from an ownership economy to a subscription economy. He rents his home, he leases his car, he pays for his food delivery, and he pays for his social life. He owns fewer and fewer assets while carrying more and more monthly obligations. This is the recipe for a permanent middle-class trap. But there is a specific turning point that happens when a man decides to stop the bleeding. It involves a radical and counterintuitive shift in how he views his time and his value. Most men try to out-earn their divorce, working more hours and taking on more stress. This almost always fails. In the next part, we are going to explore the efficiency pivot, the rare strategy used by the top 5% of divorced men who actually manage to rebuild their wealth. We will look at the math of aggressive downsizing, the legal strategies for modifying support in a shifting economy, and the one investment that actually yields a return during a period of financial reconstruction. The question is, are you willing to live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later? Because the new normal is a lie that most men believe until they are bankrupt. In part 4, we break that lie. The efficiency pivot is not a suggestion. It is a mathematical requirement for survival in the 2026 American economy. Most men attempt to solve a post-divorce financial crisis by simply working harder, essentially trying to outrun a forest fire. But when your tax bracket has shifted, your household expenses have doubled, and a significant portion of your gross income is legally earmarked for someone else, the traditional blue-collar or white-collar hustle hits a wall of diminishing returns. The top 5% of men who successfully rebuild their wealth don't just work more. They fundamentally re-engineer their entire economic footprint. They move from a defensive crouch to a lean offensive posture. Consider the case study of James, a 48-year-old software architect in Seattle. After his divorce in late 2025, James was left with a high salary of $180,000 but a net worth that had been slashed by 55%. His initial instinct was to stay in the city, maintain his professional social standing, and keep a luxury apartment to prove he hadn't lost his step. However, after 3 months of looking at his spreadsheets, James realized he was hemorrhaging capital at a rate that would make retirement impossible before age 75. James executed what we call aggressive downsizing. He moved out of the $4,500 a month city center apartment and into a $2,200 a month modest suite 45 minutes away. He sold his financed European sedan, which cost him $1,100 a month in payments and insurance, and bought a 5-year-old reliable Japanese hybrid in cash. By making these 2 moves alone, James reclaimed $3,400 a month in cash flow. Over a 12-month period, that is $40,800 in redirected capital. In the 2026 market, where high-yield savings accounts or conservative index fund allocations are yielding significant historical trends of growth, James wasn't just saving money. He was buying back his time. This is the first step of the efficiency pivot, the total rejection of status-driven expenses. James realized that in a post-divorce world, his greatest asset was no longer his home or his car, but his ability to invest liquid cash. The second pillar of this pivot involves a deep dive into the math of tax-advantaged recovery. Because James is now filing as single, he loses the higher standard deduction of a married couple. To counter this, he maximizes every possible pre-tax vehicle. He doesn't just contribute to his 401k up to the employer match. He hits the federal limit. He utilizes a health savings account as a stealth IRA. By lowering his taxable income, he effectively lowers the base upon which certain support calculations might be adjusted in the future, while simultaneously building a protected nest egg that is harder to reach in subsequent legal disputes. This is a move toward what economists call fiscal invisibility. Let us explore the historical trends of support modification. Many men assume that once a support order is signed, it is written in stone. However, the 2026 economy is volatile. In a masterclass on economic footprints, you must understand the step-by-step process of a material change in circumstances. If James's industry faces a downturn or if his company restructures his compensation from a high base salary to a performance-based bonus structure, the footprint of his support obligation may be eligible for a downward deviation. Case studies show that men who proactively monitor their state's guidelines and maintain meticulous records of their income-to-expense ratios are far more likely to successfully petition for modifications that reflect the actual economic reality, rather than a snapshot from a high-earning year in the past. Now let's look at the one investment that actually yields a return during this period: the professional pivot. While James downsized his physical life, he upscaled his intellectual capital. He realized that as a single man, he had an extra 20 to 30 hours a week that were previously dedicated to domestic management and marital obligations. Instead of spending those hours on dating apps or in a state of paralysis, he invested them into a specialized certification in artificial intelligence systems management, a high-growth sector in 2026. Within 18 months, this investment allowed him to jump to a new firm with a $220,000 base salary. Because James had already locked in his downsized lifestyle, every dollar of that $40,000 raise went directly into his recovery fund. He did not upgrade the car. He did not move back to the city center. This is the delta of recovery. The gap between your rising income and your frozen expenses is the only way to mathematically bridge the gap created by a divorce settlement. If you increase your lifestyle as your income recovers, you are simply building a larger cage for yourself. Imagine if you applied this level of forensic logic to your everyday microeconomy. Historical trends indicate that divorced men spend 25% more on convenience services than married men. The efficiency pivot requires a do-it-yourself resurgence. By reclaiming the skills of home maintenance, meal preparation, and basic financial management, the divorced man stops the convenience leak. In James's case, learning to meal prep and avoiding the Houston to Seattle delivery culture saved him an additional $700 a month. That $700, compounded over a decade at a 7% return, represents over $120,000 in future wealth. There is also the critical element of the legal audit. Many men continue to pay for expenses that are no longer their legal responsibility because they want to avoid conflict. The top 5% of men treat their divorce decree like a corporate contract. If the decree says the split for extracurricular activities is 50-50, they do not pay 60% just to keep the peace. While this sounds harsh, the economic footprint of peacekeeping overpayment can total tens of thousands of dollars over the minority of a child. By adhering strictly to the legal requirements, James ensured that his capital was preserved for the very children he was supporting, rather than being absorbed into the general household expenses of his former spouse. This brings us to the concept of the new balance sheet. In 2026, the value of an American man is often tied to his gross numbers: gross salary, gross home value. The efficiency pivot shifts the focus to net utility. James stopped caring about the size of his house and started caring about his net worth to income ratio. He realized that a man with a $100,000 salary and zero debt is economically more powerful and more resilient than a man with a $200,000 salary and $150,000 in annual obligations. However, even the most efficient pivot can be derailed by a single catastrophic oversight. There is a specific legal and financial trap that exists in the intersection of life insurance, beneficiary designations, and the Social Security system. Most men forget to update their death math post-divorce, leading to a situation where their hard-earned recovery funds are legally diverted away from their intended heirs or their own future needs. But even more pressing is the alimony cliff, the moment when support ends and a man suddenly finds himself with a massive cash flow surplus. Without a pre-existing plan, this surplus is usually wasted on lifestyle catch-up, rather than being used to solidify a legacy. In the next part, we are going to look at the wealth velocity strategy, how to prepare for the end of support obligations years in advance so that the day you stop paying is the day you become truly wealthy. We will also uncover the shadow liabilities that often remain attached to your name long after you think the case is closed. You might think the papers are signed and the debt is split, but in the digital eyes of the 2026 banking system, you might still be married to a ghost. In Part 5, we show you how to perform the final financial exorcism. The financial exorcism begins with the realization that a court order is a piece of paper, but a credit report is a living digital entity. In the United States in 2026, the decoupling of two lives is rarely as clean as the judge's signature suggests. This is because the algorithms used by major credit bureaus and financial institutions prioritize the original contract over the subsequent divorce decree. If you signed a 30-year mortgage or a 5-year car loan with a spouse, the lender does not care who was awarded the asset in the settlement. To the bank, you are both still 100% liable for the full amount of the debt. This is the shadow liability that can haunt a man's economic footprint for decades. Consider the case study of Robert, a 52-year-old healthcare administrator in Phoenix. In his 2024 divorce, Robert was awarded the vacation property, while his ex-spouse was awarded the primary residence. The decree explicitly stated that his ex-spouse was responsible for the mortgage payments on that primary home. However, she was unable to refinance the loan in her own name due to the high interest rate environment of 2025 and 2026. Robert, feeling the case was closed, stopped monitoring the account. 6 months later, his ex-spouse missed 2 payments. Because Robert's name was still on the original promissory note, his credit score plummeted from a 780 to a 640 in a single reporting cycle. This credit contagion is the first ghost we must exorcise. The step-by-step reality of 2026 banking means that unless a debt is paid in full or legally refinanced into a single name, the risk remains shared. For Robert, the economic footprint of this mistake was massive. When he went to renew the professional liability insurance required for his role in healthcare administration, his premium spiked by 40% because of his credit drop. In the eyes of the insurance company's risk algorithm, a lower credit score correlates with higher professional risk. Robert was effectively paying a penalty for a house he no longer lived in and for a default he did not commit. To perform a successful financial exorcism, a man must move through the process of indemnification. This involves working with legal counsel to ensure that the divorce decree contains specific language regarding the sale of assets if a refinance cannot be achieved within a strict time frame, usually 90 days. If the ex-spouse cannot remove Robert's name from the mortgage, the house must be sold. This is a hardline economic stance, but in the 2026 fiscal climate, it is a survival mechanism. Without this trigger for sale clause, A man remains a financial hostage to his former partner's creditworthiness. Next, we must look at the step-by-step audit of beneficiary designations. This is perhaps the most dangerous shadow liability because it remains invisible until it is too late. Historical trends show that a significant percentage of men forget to update the beneficiaries on their employer-sponsored life insurance, 401k plans, and transfer on death accounts. In many U.S. jurisdictions, a divorce decree does not automatically revoke a beneficiary designation on a federal ERISA-governed plan. Imagine a scenario where Robert remarries in 2026 and spends 2 years rebuilding his life. If Robert were to pass away, his current wife might find that his $500,000 life insurance policy and his $300,000 401k are legally mandated to go to his ex-wife because he never updated the digital beneficiary forms with his HR department. This is the ultimate economic footprint, the total diversion of a lifetime of work away from his intended legacy. The exorcism requires a manual, line-by-line update of every digital portal associated with his wealth. We also have to address the Social Security spousal benefit. This is a ghost that actually works in favor of the divorced man, yet few understand the math. If Robert was married for at least 10 years and has been divorced for at least 2, his ex-spouse may be eligible to collect a benefit based on his earnings record when she reaches retirement age. Crucially, this does not reduce Robert's own benefit, nor does it reduce the benefit of a potential future spouse. However, the economic footprint here is the potential for increased tax scrutiny or administrative complexity if both parties are drawing from the same record. Understanding this historical trend allows a man to plan his retirement cash flow with more precision, knowing that his earning legacy is being utilized by multiple parties without depleting his own pocket. Then there is the issue of the joint tax liability. Even if you are divorced in 2026, the IRS can still hold you responsible for taxes, interest, and penalties related to joint returns filed during the marriage. If an audit occurs 3 years post-divorce and discovers an error in the business deductions taken while the couple was married, the IRS will pursue both individuals. The exorcism here involves the innocent spouse relief provisions, but qualifying for this is a high legal bar. A proactive man ensures that his settlement includes an indemnity and hold harmless agreement specifically for tax liabilities, and he maintains a dedicated tax contingency fund for at least 3 years following his final joint filing. Let us look at the case study of the digital footprint. In 2026, many households share subscriptions, cloud storage, and even security system access. If Robert's ex-spouse still has access to his cloud account, she has access to his financial statements, his new lease agreements, and his professional communications. The economic cost of a privacy breach during or after a divorce can be measured in legal fees to address contempt of court or harassment charges. But the deeper cost is the loss of strategic surprise in future support modifications. The financial exorcism requires a total digital reset, new passwords, new recovery emails, and a dedicated device that has never been synced to the former marital network. Step by step, we are stripping away the ties that bind the man to a defunct economic unit. But as these ties are cut, a new problem emerges, the wealth velocity gap. As Robert stabilizes his expenses and clears the ghost from his credit report, he often finds himself with a surplus for the first time in years. However, he is now starting from behind. He is 52 years old with a net worth of a 35-year-old. He cannot afford to invest like a 20-something, but he cannot afford the risk of a senior. This is where the alimony cliff planning becomes essential. If Robert is paying $2,000 a month in maintenance that is set to expire in 2028, most men simply wait for that day to start spending that money on a vacation. The top-tier strategy is to pre-allocate that money. Robert should be living as if he will never see that $2,000 again, setting up automated transfers that will trigger the moment the legal obligation ends. By moving that money directly from support payment to wealth accumulation, without it ever hitting his checking account, he bypasses the psychological urge to inflate his lifestyle. The economic footprint of a divorced man is ultimately defined by his ability to close the loops. A man who leaves a joint credit card open, just for the kids' emergencies, is a man who is one late payment away from a financial setback. A man who fails to capture the tax basis of the assets he received in the split is a man who will pay a massive capital gains trap when he eventually sells them. As we conclude this part of the masterclass, we have cleared the wreckage and exorcised the ghosts. We have a lean downsized life and a clean digital profile. But now we face the most complex challenge of all, the multi-generational squeeze. In the 2026 economy, A divorced man is often caught between the rising costs of his children's collegiate ambitions and the declining health of his aging parents, all while trying to fund his own delayed retirement. In the next part, we dive into the trifecta of pressure, how to navigate the competing financial demands of 3 generations when you no longer have a partner to share the load. We will look at the math of educational redlining and the hidden costs of being the sole provider in an era of hyperinflation. The burden is about to get heavier. Do you have the structural integrity to carry it? In Part 6, we test the frame. The trifecta of pressure is the structural test of the American man's financial frame in 2026. This occurs when the divorced man finds himself positioned as the singular financial pillar for 3 distinct generations. His children navigating an era of hyperinflated education costs, his aging parents who may have outlived their own retirement savings, and his own future self, which is currently operating with a depleted nest egg. In a dual-income marriage, these pressures are shared, negotiated, and subsidized by 2 sets of social security brackets and 2 career trajectories. In the aftermath of a divorce, the man often discovers that while his support systems have halved, his obligations have tripled. Consider the case study of Thomas, a 54-year-old mid-level director in Columbus, Ohio. It is mid-2026, and Thomas has been divorced for 4 years. He has managed to stabilize his lifestyle, but he is now hitting the educational redlining phase. His eldest daughter is entering her freshman year at a state university where the total cost of attendance, including tuition, housing, and the significantly higher cost of digital curriculum materials in 2026, has climbed to $45,000 per year. Because Thomas is the higher earner and his divorce decree stipulated a pro rata contribution to college expenses, he is responsible for 70% of this cost. However, there is a hidden step-by-step trap in the FAFSA and institutional aid calculations. Even though Thomas's disposable income is crippled by his individual tax filing status and lingering maintenance payments, the financial aid algorithms often look at his gross income. He earns too much to qualify for significant grants but has too little liquid cash to pay out of pocket. This forces Thomas to look at Parent Plus loans or private student loans at interest rates that, in 2026, hover around 8.5%. This is the first leg of the trifecta, the absorption of high-interest debt to satisfy an educational obligation that was calculated based on his pre-divorce earning potential, not his post-divorce reality. Simultaneously, Thomas is hit by the second leg, elder care economic drift. His 80-year-old mother, living in a different state, has experienced a decline in health. In the past, his spouse might have provided in-kind support, managing the logistics of care, visiting frequently, or providing basic domestic assistance. Now, Thomas must outsource every second of that care. Historical trends show that the cost of home health aides in the U.S. has risen 15% faster than general inflation over the last 3 years. Thomas finds himself paying $3,000 a month for part-time assistance to keep his mother in her home. Because he is divorced, he cannot lean on a partner to split the travel time or the administrative burden of managing her Medicare claims. He is paying the solitary provider premium, which drains his surplus and prevents him from catching up on his own retirement. The third leg of the trifecta is the self-preservation deficit. Thomas is 54. He has roughly 11 years of peak earning power left. Every dollar he sends to the university or the home health agency is a dollar that is not compounding in his own 401k. In the 2026 economy, the historical trend of Social Security sustainability is a frequent topic of debate, making personal retirement accounts more critical than ever. Thomas is experiencing what we call structural fragility. If he suffers a medical setback or a job loss, the entire 3-generation system collapses because there is no secondary income to act as a safety net. Let us look at the math of the sole provider premium. Imagine if Thomas's car transmission fails. In a married household, they might shift funds from a secondary savings account or rely on the other spouse's bonus. For Thomas, this is a $5,000 emergency that usually ends up on a credit card. Because his debt-to-income ratio is already stretched by the college loans and elder care, his credit score stays suppressed, keeping his borrowing costs high. This is the trifecta squeeze, a constant state of financial redlining where the man is one medium-sized emergency away from total insolvency. We also have to analyze the case study of the hidden collegiate costs. In 2026, the economic footprint of a child in college isn't just tuition. It is the expectation of maintaining the child's lifestyle to match their peers. For a divorced father, there is often a psychological guilt tax involved. Thomas feels he has already disrupted his daughter's life with the divorce. So when she asks for an extra $500 a month for a safer apartment or a study abroad program, he finds it nearly impossible to say no, even if it means skipping his own health insurance contributions for a quarter. This emotional economic crossover is a primary driver of wealth depletion for divorced men in their 50s. Step by step, the man's financial frame is being tested for cracks. To survive this, Thomas must implement the triage protocol. This involves a brutal prioritization of his own retirement first, contrary to every paternal instinct. Historical trends suggest that children can borrow for college, and elderly parents may have access to state-subsidized programs, but no one will lend Thomas money for his retirement. The men who successfully navigate the trifecta are those who set hard caps on their contributions to other generations. For instance, Thomas could move his mother into his own home, despite the loss of privacy. This reconsolidation of the household is an efficiency move that eliminates the $3,000 monthly care drain and the cost of her separate utilities. While it increases his domestic stress, it saves his financial frame from snapping. Similarly, he might have to have the reality check conversation with his daughter, shifting her toward a community college for the first 2 years or requiring her to work 20 hours a week to cover her own lifestyle expenses. These are the hard target decisions that the top 5% of divorced men make to ensure they don't become a financial burden on their children 20 years down the line. The economic footprint here is one of consolidation. The American dream of 3 separate, flourishing households, the college student in a dorm, the man in his bachelor pad, and the grandmother in her cottage, is often a mathematical impossibility for the divorced man in 2026. Those who try to maintain all 3 usually end up with 0. However, even if Tom manages to balance these 3 generations, there is a looming threat that can bypass all his planning. It is the legislative variable. In 2026, we are seeing shifts in how states treat gray divorce assets and how the federal government views the taxability of redirected wealth. There are new regulations appearing in several states regarding filial responsibility laws, where children can be held legally responsible for the costs of their parents' care if the parents' assets are exhausted. For a divorced man, this means his legal liability could suddenly expand to include his ex-in-laws or other peripheral family members. As we move into Part 7, we are going to look at the ultimate exit strategy. We will explore the math of relocating to tax haven states, the legal shields used to protect the last of a man's assets from the trifecta of pressure, and the controversial strategy of international financial arbitrage. Many men in 2026 are realizing that to save their future, they have to leave the geographic footprint of their past entirely. We will dive into the data on the expat economic recovery and why some men are finding that the only way to win the game is to change the board. But there is a massive catch, one that involves your passport and your future Social Security checks. Do you know the departure tax of a life left behind? In the next part, we cross the border. The concept of international financial arbitrage is no longer a fringe theory for the ultra-wealthy. In 2026, it has become a survival blueprint for the American divorced man, who finds himself mathematically insolvent within the domestic borders of the United States. When the cost of living, taxation, and support obligations exceed 80% of a man's net take-home pay, the only variable left to change is the geography itself. This is the ultimate exit strategy, moving your life to a jurisdiction where your remaining 20% of income has the purchasing power of 100%. However, as we cross this border, we encounter a complex web of exit taxes, social security treaties, and the high-stakes reality of the departure tax. Imagine a character named Christopher, a 58-year-old systems engineer from Denver. After 22 years of marriage and a 2024 divorce, Christopher is left with a pension that is being split at the source, a monthly alimony obligation of $3,500 that runs for another 6 years, and a 401k that was halved. In Denver, Christopher's remaining $4,000 a month in take-home pay barely covers a 1-bedroom apartment, health insurance, and basic groceries. He is living in functional poverty despite a lifetime of high-level engineering work. Christopher looks at the historical trends of the digital nomad and golden visa programs in 2026. He realizes that if he relocates to a region like Southeast Asia, Central America, or Southern Europe, his $4,000 monthly surplus transforms. In a city like Medellin, Lisbon, or Bangkok, that same $4,000 affords a luxury high-rise, private healthcare that rivals U.S. standards, and a social life that is financially sustainable. This is geographic arbitrage in its purest form. He is not increasing his income. He is radically devaluing his expenses by 70%. However, the step-by-step process of this exit is fraught with what we call the departure tax. While the United States does not have a formal exit tax for citizens unless they are renouncing their citizenship and meet high net worth thresholds, the functional exit tax for a divorced man lies in his legal obligations. Christopher cannot simply disappear. If his divorce decree includes a notice of relocation clause, he may be required to return to the U.S. for mediation or court appearances. The cost of these flights, combined with the potential for his ex-spouse to file for a modification of support based on his reduced cost of living, creates a secondary economic footprint. In 2026, some U.S. courts are beginning to view the savings from geographic arbitrage as increased ability to pay, meaning a man's attempt to save his retirement could lead to an upward adjustment in his support payments. This is a critical case study in why legal silence and ironclad residency planning are essential. Let us analyze the Social Security trap. Many men believe they can retire abroad and collect their full benefits without consequence. While it is true that U.S. citizens can receive Social Security payments in most countries, the tax treaty between the U.S. and the destination country is the deciding factor in your wealth velocity. If Christopher moves to a country without a robust tax treaty, he might face a 30% flat withholding tax from the IRS on his Social Security checks, plus local taxes in his new home. He must calculate the tax effect of presence. In 2026, the IRS is increasingly using digital footprints, credit card swipes and IP addresses, to determine where a citizen is actually living. If Christopher claims he is a resident of a tax-free state like Florida, but spends 300 days a year in Mexico, he faces a potential audit that could claw back thousands in state tax savings. Then there is the economic footprint of healthcare. In the U.S., a 60-year-old divorced man might pay $1,200 a month for a silver-tier health insurance plan with a $5,000 deductible. By moving to a jurisdiction with high-quality private healthcare, such as Costa Rica or Malaysia, he can often secure a comprehensive international policy for $200 a month with a negligible deductible. This $1,000 monthly delta is the equivalent of a $12,000 annual raise. For a man trying to rebuild a retirement fund, this is the most efficient investment he can make. Case studies show that men who make this move often see their health outcomes improve simply because the financial stress of the U.S. medical-industrial complex has been removed. We must also look at the social arbitrage component. In many of these international hubs, the social cost of being a divorced man is significantly lower. In the U.S., social circles often revolve around couple-based activities that require high discretionary spending. Abroad, the expat economy is built on individual mobility and lower-cost social engagement. Christopher finds that his dating and networking budget drops from $1,000 a month in Denver to $250 a month in a foreign hub, without a sacrifice in quality of life. This is the hidden lifestyle dividend of the exit strategy. But what about the kids? This is where the geographic exit strategy meets the emotional economic firewall. If Christopher's children are still in university or are starting their own lives in the U.S., his relocation creates a massive increase in connectivity costs. The price of 4 round-trip international flights a year, the cost of maintaining a landing pad in the U.S. for visits, and the potential for a distance-based emotional rift are real economic factors. Historical trends suggest that men who relocate abroad often spend the first 24 months in a state of financial oscillation, where they spend so much money traveling back to the U.S. that they negate the savings of living abroad. A true exit requires a digital-first fatherhood strategy, which carries its own psychological footprint. Step by step, Christopher must also navigate the asset localization challenge. In 2026, moving large sums of money out of the U.S. banking system triggers significant reporting requirements under FATCA, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. If Christopher tries to buy real estate in a foreign country to lock in his low cost of living, he must navigate foreign ownership laws, potential currency fluctuations, and the risk of sovereign instability. The economic footprint of a bad foreign real estate deal can be the final blow to a man's recovery. The successful men in this 5% bracket do not buy. They rent luxury for pennies on the dollar, keeping their capital liquid in US-based, dollar-denominated assets. This is the liquid nomad protocol. This masterclass is showing us that for the divorced man in 2026, the world is a chessboard. The US is a square where the pieces are heavily stacked against him. Moving to a different square can save his king, but it requires a total reevaluation of what he considers home. Christopher is no longer a citizen of a city. He is a manager of a global portfolio. However, as some men look toward the border, others are looking inward at a much more controversial and growing trend within the U.S. the co-living brotherhood. This is the rise of high-earning men sharing luxury domestic spaces to recreate the economies of scale they lost in the divorce. It is the rejection of the bachelor pad in favor of the corporate manor. In the next part, we explore the math of the new fraternity. We will look at the legal contracts required to share assets with other men, the massive tax advantages of strategic roommates, and why the 2026 housing market is forcing even executives to reconsider the Golden Girls model for men. Is the future of male wealth found in a community you never expected to join? In Part 8, we tear down the walls of the single-man household. The concept of the lone bachelor living in a high-rise apartment is a luxury that the 2026 American economy has largely rendered obsolete for the divorced man seeking wealth recovery. We are currently witnessing the rise of the strategic brotherhood, a lifestyle shift where high-earning professionals are rejecting the financial hemorrhage of the single-man household in favor of the corporate manor. This is not a return to college dorm life. It is a sophisticated application of business-level economies of scale to personal living. By consolidating resources with 2 or 3 other men in similar professional and domestic situations, a man can effectively cut his largest fixed expenses by 60% while simultaneously upgrading his quality of life. Imagine a character named Mark, a 50-year-old marketing vice president in Atlanta. In early 2026, Mark was spending $3,800 a month on a premium 2-bedroom apartment that he needed primarily so his children would have a place to stay during weekend visits. When you add in the $600 for utilities, high-speed fiber, and security, plus another $500 for a cleaning service and yard maintenance for his shared interest in a small rental, Mark was losing nearly $5,000 a month just to keep a roof over his head. This represented over 50% of his post-child support take-home pay. Mark was working 60 hours a week just to fund a lifestyle of isolation. Mark decided to enter into a co-living partnership with 2 other divorced executives. Together, they leased a $9,000 a month estate in an upscale suburb. $9,000 sounds like an astronomical figure. When split 3 ways, Mark's share dropped to $3,000. For $800 less than his cramped apartment, he now has access to a 5-bedroom home with a pool, a dedicated home office, a professional-grade kitchen, and a theater room for when his kids visit. The economic footprint of this move is transformative. Step by step, the math of the shared infrastructure kicks in. The $600 utility and internet bill is now split 3 ways. The cleaning service and landscaping costs are split 3 ways. Mark's total housing and maintenance carry dropped from $5,000 to $3,400. That is an immediate $1,600 monthly injection into his depleted brokerage account. The historical trends of the 2020s have shown that the single largest drain on a divorced man's wealth is the duplication of services. When Mark lived alone, he paid for 100% of the standing capacity of his home, the square footage he didn't use, the heat in empty rooms, and the subscription services he only watched twice a week. In the corporate manor model, the utilization rate of the asset increases, and the cost per user plummets. This is the same logic used by venture capital firms and startups to reduce burn rates. By applying this to his personal life, Mark has created a $19,200 annual surplus. Over 5 years at a historical market return of 7%, that move alone builds a $112,000 cushion that simply would not exist if he had stayed in his status-appropriate bachelor pad. But the economic benefits go beyond just the split of the rent. We must analyze the case study of the bulk procurement strategy. In 2026, food inflation has made individual grocery shopping a significant liability. Mark and his partners utilize a shared commercial account for bulk delivery of high-quality proteins, household staples, and cleaning supplies. By moving from the retail convenience model to a wholesale bulk model, Mark's personal food and household expenditure dropped by an additional $400 a month. Furthermore, the in-kind service exchange within the house provides a hidden dividend. One partner is a CPA, another is a tech specialist. The informal exchange of professional advice and labor within the household saves each man thousands in external consulting fees. There is, however, a critical step-by-step legal framework required to make this work. In the 2026 legal climate, you cannot simply move in together on a handshake. Successful co-living arrangements between high-net-worth men involve a domestic partnership agreement or a co-tenancy contract. This document outlines the exit strategy if one partner remarries or loses his job, the protocols for guests and children, and the precise division of shared liabilities. This legal shield is what prevents a frat house disaster and turns the arrangement into a strategic wealth-building vehicle. It ensures that the economic footprint of the household remains stable, even if the individual members' lives fluctuate. We also have to consider the impact on the child support and maintenance variables. In some jurisdictions, living in a shared luxury environment can actually be a defensive maneuver. If a man lives in a modest apartment, he may be perceived as having a lower cost of subsistence, which could potentially be used to argue for higher support payments. However, by living in a high-end shared estate, he maintains a professional standard of living that justifies his expenses while actually paying less out of pocket. He is essentially cloaking his savings within a high-status shared environment. The psychological economic crossover is equally significant. Historical data indicates that men in isolated living situations post-divorce are 40% more likely to engage in compensatory spending, buying expensive gadgets or eating out frequently to combat loneliness. In the corporate manner, the built-in social network provides a low-cost entertainment baseline. A Saturday night watching the game in a shared theater room costs $10 in shared snacks, whereas a night out in Atlanta to achieve the same level of social stimulation could easily cost $300. Over a year, this social arbitrage adds another $5,000 to $10,000 to the man's bottom line. Let us look at the tax neutrality of this model. Unlike a marriage where the two incomes are combined and often pushed into a higher tax bracket, the strategic brotherhood allows each man to maintain his head of household or single filing status while enjoying the lifestyle of a much higher earning unit. They are hacking the system to get dual income or triple income, lifestyle benefits without the marriage tax or the legal entanglement of a spouse. In the eyes of the IRS in 2026, they are three independent economic units. In the eyes of the market, they are a powerful consolidated purchasing block. As we move deeper into this masterclass, we see that the divorced man's path to recovery is paved with the rejection of traditional American individualism. The man in the castle myth is what kept Mark broke. The man in the partnership reality is what is making him wealthy again. He is reclaiming his wealth velocity by realizing that he doesn't need to own the castle. He just needs to control his share of it. But this model of shared luxury and hyper-efficiency is merely the foundation. There is a final, much more aggressive level to this economic reconstruction. It involves a concept known as asset shielding and the private family trust. Once a man has stabilized his cash flow through co-living and arbitrage, he must protect that new wealth from the secondary litigation wave. As men become successful again, they often become targets for modified support petitions or new legal challenges. In the next part, we explore the math of invisible wealth. We will look at how to move your recovery funds into structures that are legally separated from your personhood, the role of legacy trusts in 2026, and why the most successful divorced men in America technically own nothing while controlling everything. You have built the surplus, now how do you keep it? In Part 9 we build the fortress. The construction of the financial fortress begins with a shift in philosophy from ownership to stewardship. In the hyper-litigious environment of the United States in 2026, personal ownership of high-value assets is increasingly viewed by wealth managers as a structural liability. For the divorced man who has successfully navigated the efficiency pivot and the co-living model, the next phase of the economic footprint involves the creation of a private family trust. This is the strategy of becoming legally invisible while maintaining total functional control. The goal is to ensure that your recovery is not cannibalized by a secondary wave of litigation or retroactive support modifications that often follow a man's return to prosperity. Imagine a character named Steven, a 53-year-old logistics consultant in Chicago. After his 2023 divorce, Steven spent 3 years living lean, rebuilding his cash reserves, and maximizing his 401k. By 2026, he has managed to accumulate a $300,000 brokerage account and a successful side consultancy. However, Steven's success has made him a visible target. Under many state laws, a significant upward shift in income can be grounds for an ex-spouse to petition for an increase in child support or, in some cases, a modification of alimony. To protect the velocity of his wealth building, Steven works with a specialized estate attorney to establish an irrevocable trust. The step-by-step math of this move is profound. By transferring his brokerage account and his consultancy's intellectual property into the trust, Stephen no longer technically owns those assets. The trust is a separate legal person with its own taxpayer identification number. When Stephen's income is evaluated by a court or a lending institution, his personal balance sheet looks modest, while the trust continues to compound wealth in the background. This is not about hiding money, which is illegal and carries severe penalties, but about using historical trends in asset protection to separate personal liability from long-term capital. Stephen is the manager of the trust, meaning he controls the investments, but he is not the owner. Let us analyze the case study of the shadow asset protection. In 2026, one of the most common economic footprints of a successful divorced man is the remarriage trap. If Stephen decides to marry again without a fortress in place, his new spouse's financial life becomes entangled with his own. If that second marriage fails, the assets he worked so hard to rebuild post-divorce could be subject to a second round of equitable distribution. By placing his recovery funds in a pre-existing trust, Stephen creates a biological barrier around his wealth. The assets inside the trust were never marital property. They belong to the trust entity. This historical trend in legacy planning ensures that Stephen's children from his first marriage are the primary beneficiaries, protecting their inheritance from future domestic volatility. Furthermore, we must look at the math of the step-up in basis and estate tax efficiency. In the 2026 fiscal landscape, the federal government has tightened regulations on individual capital gains. However, assets held within certain trust structures can benefit from sophisticated tax treatment that allows for the growth to be passed to heirs with a reduced tax footprint. For Stephen, this means his $300,000 recovery fund can grow into a $1 million legacy for his children without being decimated by the 25% to 30% success tax that often hits individuals who build wealth later in life. He is essentially shielding his recovery from the government and future litigants simultaneously. Step by step, the fortress also involves the use of limited liability companies, LLCs, as subentities of the trust. If Stephen buys a piece of rental real estate as part of his retirement plan, he does not buy it in his own name. The trust owns an LLC, and the LLC owns the property. If a tenant slips and falls on that property in 2027, the lawsuit stops at the LLC. It cannot reach Stephen's personal bank account, and it cannot reach the core assets of the trust. This multi-layered shielding is the gold standard for divorced men who cannot afford a single financial setback. They are operating with a zero-fail mentality. Another critical element of the 2026 fortress is the protection of future earning power. In some U.S. jurisdictions, courts have begun to experiment with the idea of human capital valuation in high-stakes divorces. By housing his professional consultancy within a corporate structure owned by his trust, Stephen effectively caps his personal market value. His salary is a fixed, reasonable expense paid by the corporation, while the surplus profit stays within the entity to be reinvested. This creates a predictable income profile that is essential for long-term stability and support obligations. Consider the imagine if scenario. Imagine if Stephen's consultancy lands a massive contract that triples his income for 1 year. If that money hits Stephen's personal bank account, he may be legally required to turn over a massive percentage of it in modified support. If that contract is paid to his trust-owned corporation, the spike in wealth is captured within the fortress. The corporation can then choose to distribute that money over 10 years as a steady, modest salary, or keep it as retained earnings for future investment. Stephen has successfully decoupled his professional wins from his personal liabilities. We must also address the economic footprint of life insurance within the fortress. Many divorced men are court-ordered to maintain life insurance to secure their support payments. This is often a leaking asset. You pay the premiums, but you get no value. The top 5% of men use an irrevocable life insurance trust, ILIT. By having the trust own the policy, the death benefit is not considered part of the man's taxable estate. Furthermore, they often use cash value components that can be borrowed against by the trust to fund other investments. The man's obligation to have insurance is transformed into a strategic tool for wealth accumulation. The final layer of the fortress is the digital vault. In an era where data is a commodity, a man's financial fortress is only as strong as his privacy. Stephen uses encrypted communication for all trust-related business and maintains his accounts in jurisdictions with strong privacy laws, even within the U.S., such as South Dakota or Nevada, which are known for their favorable trust statutes. This reduces his public wealth profile, making him a less attractive target for predatory litigation from debt collectors, ex-relatives, or speculative lawsuits. As we conclude Part 9, the man who was once broken and depleted has become a ghost of wealth. He walks through the world with the same clothes and the same car, but behind him stands a multi-layered legal and financial structure that is virtually impenetrable. He has moved from the efficiency pivot to the fortress protocol. He is no longer a victim of the divorce math. He has mastered the math of the system itself. However, even a fortress needs a purpose. Wealth without a mission is just a target. As we enter the final part of this deep dive masterclass, we are going to look at the legacy reset. How does a man who has rebuilt his wealth and protected his assets actually spend his second life? We will explore the economics of the second family, the math of charitable lead trusts, and the ultimate goal, financial autonomy. But there is one final hurdle. It is the psychological barrier of success guilt. Many men who win the recovery game struggle to actually enjoy the fruits of their labor. In Part 10, we complete the journey from the wreckage to the peak. We reveal the endgame strategy for the American man. Are you ready to stop surviving and start presiding over your own empire? The final part starts now. The endgame of the American man's economic recovery is the transition from defensive preservation to offensive legacy. By 2026, the man who has followed the protocol of the previous 9 parts has successfully navigated the wreckage, implemented the efficiency pivot, and constructed a legal fortress. Now he faces the most sophisticated challenge of the entire journey: the strategic allocation of autonomy. This is where the mathematical recovery meets the psychological reality of long-term fulfillment. In this final stage, we analyze how to deploy the rebuilt capital to ensure that the economic footprint left behind is one of generational strength rather than just survival. Consider the case study of William, a 60-year-old high-level operations manager in Charlotte. It is late 2026, and William has been divorced for 8 years. Through aggressive downsizing and the use of the corporate manor co-living model, he has not only recovered the 50% of his net worth lost in the split, but has exceeded his pre-divorce peak by 20%. William is now entering what we call the wealth velocity peak. His alimony payments have ceased, his children have graduated from university, and his trust is compounding at a rate that exceeds his annual cost of living. William is now faced with the decision of the second life. The first step-by-step component of the endgame is the financial autonomy audit. In 2026, many men suffer from a psychological residue known as scarcity trauma. Even though William has a multi-million-dollar trust, he still lives as if he is one legal bill away from bankruptcy. To overcome this, he must run a Monte Carlo simulation, a historical trend-based mathematical model that tests his portfolio against 1,000 different economic scenarios, including high inflation and market crashes. When the simulation shows a 99% success rate for his capital lasting until age 100, the economic footprint shifts from saving to spending for impact. One of the most complex economic maneuvers in 2026 is the management of the second family. Historical trends show that many divorced men eventually enter new long-term relationships or remarry. The economic footprint of a second family can be even more volatile than the first if not managed with the precision of a corporate merger. William's strategy involves the implementation of a premarital asset segregation protocol. By keeping his recovery assets within the pre-existing trust and using a new, separate joint account for current living expenses with a new partner, he ensures that his empire of recovery remains siloed. This is not about a lack of trust. It is about the cold math of protecting the legacy he built from the ashes. Imagine if William decides to fund a new business venture for his adult son or a scholarship fund for his grandchildren. In the U.S. tax environment of 2026, simply writing a check is the least efficient way to move money. Instead, William utilizes the charitable lead trust. By funneling a portion of his trust's growth into a charitable vehicle that supports a cause he values, he receives a significant tax deduction that offsets his remaining professional income. After a set period of years, the remaining assets in that vehicle revert to his heirs with a reduced gift tax burden. This is the double dividend. He supports his community and optimizes his family's wealth simultaneously. Let us look at the step-by-step math of the lifestyle dividend. For the first time in a decade, William can afford luxury. However, in the 2026 economy, the top 5% of men prioritize experiential assets over depreciating status symbols. Instead of buying a $150,000 sports car that will lose 20% of its value in 12 months, William invests $150,000 into a family compound, a small property in a low-tax state where his children and grandchildren can gather. The economic footprint of this move is dual purpose. It is a real estate investment that historically trends toward appreciation, and it is a social anchor that prevents the fragmentation of his family that often occurs after a divorce. Furthermore, we must analyze the professional exit strategy. In 2026, the concept of a hard retirement is being replaced by fractional consulting. William does not just stop working and start drawing down his principal. He transitions his 60-hour-a-week corporate role into a 10-hour-a-week advisory position, charging a premium for his decades of operations experience. This income tail covers his daily living expenses, allowing the core of his trust to continue compounding untouched. By 2026, the cost of healthcare for a man in his 60s is a major fiscal variable. By maintaining a fractional consulting role, William can often maintain access to high-quality group health rates or use his business structure to tax-deduct his private insurance premiums as a business expense. Now let us address the most controversial part of the endgame, the estate tax cliff. As William's wealth grows, he risks hitting the federal estate tax threshold. If he does nothing, the government could take up to 40% of his recovery funds upon his passing. The final exorcism involves gifting to the max. In 2026, William uses the annual gift tax exclusion to move small, consistent amounts of capital to his children's own investment accounts. This early inheritance strategy allows his children to benefit from compounding interest while they are still young, and it removes that capital from William's taxable estate. He is essentially deflating his own balloon to ensure the air goes into his children's lungs. The economic footprint of the divorced man in America is ultimately the story of a man who was forced to become a master of his own microeconomy. In Part 1, he was a victim of a system he didn't understand. By Part 10, he is a sovereign economic entity. The endgame is the moment he realizes that his divorce was not the end of his story, but the brutal, necessary catalyst for a much more efficient and powerful version of his life. He has moved from a joint life that was economically optimized for someone else to a directed life that is mathematically optimized for his own legacy. As William sits on the porch of his family compound, looking at the spreadsheet of his trust performance, he realizes that the divorce tax he paid in 2024 was actually a one-time tuition payment for the most valuable financial education of his life. He no longer fears the court, the bank, or the market. He has built a system that is anti-fragile. It gets stronger under pressure. This is the true meaning of presiding over your own empire. But as this masterclass concludes, there is one final question. This 10-part series has provided the blueprint for the economic footprint, but the landscape of America is constantly shifting. New tax laws, changes in alimony reform, and the rise of decentralized finance are already beginning to alter the rules for 2027 and beyond. The fortress you built today must be maintained tomorrow. The journey of the divorced man never truly ends. It only evolves. While this deep dive is complete, the live data is just beginning to roll in on the next great shift in the American domestic economy. The rabbit hole of Part 1 led us here. But what happens when the very definition of a household changes again? The cycle of wealth and wreckage continues, and only the informed will survive the next wave. Stay vigilant, stay lean, and always monitor the footprint.